Hello, everyone. Welcome back to True Crime Files with Kathy. Hope you're all having a good morning. This news broke yesterday, and there was a part one, and then there's a part two now. It's about a woman went missing in the Bahamas. So it was meant to be a relaxing, excuse me, a relaxing boat trip that turned into a complete nightmare. The woman who's missing is Lynette Hooker. She vanished in the ocean after her husband claimed that she fell overboard in the Bahamas. Do you believe that, or do we not? You know, he is innocent till proven guilty. That's what I say. But what happened next raised serious questions. He waited a few hours to report it. Apparently she was holding on to the boat keys. Don't know why. But maybe you would have thought he would have done, being the man. And now he's been arrested, which is the next breaking news. So the law and order crime video I'm going to show you is in two parts. And I'm going to do it in one part, but it is in two parts because the rest broke as breaking news this morning. So, this is a chilling case, as I call it, because apparently she was a really strong swimmer. So I don't know why, if she went overboard naturally, or, if she was pushed. But I'll play you the thing. Anything I'm going to say now, a minute, let me just get the news link up. And then I've just got to bring up my disclaimer, because I'm trying to get in the habit now of doing disclaimers, because otherwise I'm going to forget. So I'll just bring that up. So disclaimer, like everyone else's channel, the following video may contain graphic content and descriptions, strong language, maybe sensitive topics. I didn't watch the second part, but I've watched the first part last night. I don't think it's too graphic, but as I said, I'm going to start getting in the habit of putting this disclaimer up for people to see it when I start my lives, or pre-recorded. If you can click like, share, and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that, because it gets me into the YouTube algorithms. Right, let's bring this one up on stage and I'll play you. I skipped his paid advert that he does, because I don't want to do adverts on my channel. Here we go.
Seem to be living the life that so many people aspire to live. They left the grind of the world behind, and they've been sailing to some of the most picturesque places on Earth.
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
Here are the hookers aboard their boat, aptly named Soulmate. Right now, authorities in the Bahamas are trying to find Lynette Hooker after Brian claims a terrible accident happened on the water Saturday night. Brian made his first public statement since this story became national news, and I'm going to get into what he is now saying in just a moment, as well as the concerning allegations that Lynette's daughter is now going public with against Brian, and what he reportedly told her and what he sounded like, she says, when they briefly spoke on the phone. So before we get to all of that, I want to get into what we have learned about this couple and what they were doing right before Lynette vanished. This is a video that the hookers posted to their YouTube channel just 4 weeks ago from the Bahamas. You can see they're paddleboarding down a waterway. The social media channels for this couple, and they're very active on social media producing content, is called the Sailing Hookers. And the couple would post videos of them going to some amazing places in the Caribbean. Their TikTok account says, "We sailed away from BS, a married couple living their best life." And it really appeared, looking at these videos, that that is what they were doing. This is their last TikTok post from 5 days ago of them enjoying the Bahamas. Now, this couple bought a boat in Texas 3 years ago, according to social media. Big sailboat, nice enough cabin where you can spend the night and do these long trips. And it seems like the hookers are incredibly experienced on the water. This is part of the video when they announced that they had bought this boat, showing Brian climbing up the mast with a safety harness and Lynette spotting him. If you're going to sail a boat like this and you're going to do what they did, sailing these long haul trips, and they reportedly did this for 10 years, you really have to be experienced, you have to be a team, and you have to look out for each other. And it appears that's who the hookers were. Now, knowing just how much this couple seemed to care about safety, it does make what allegedly happened on Saturday night a little bit surprising. This is a picture that was
And also, when you're on the water, if you care about safety, I can't remember if he says this or not, but you would be wearing life jackets, surely, no matter what time of day or night. It works out that she fell overboard when they were on this boat about, excuse me, about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and it was dark. So why would you go on the waters when it's dark, when you got no lights? You got no navigation system that I can see on that boat, and they're not wearing life jackets. You know, to me, it screams suspicious from straight away of it.
part of the last TikTok video that the hookers posted from the Bahamas, and it's the two of them riding on what appears to be a dinghy, a small boat. It's inflatable, has a hard bottom, an engine on the back, and it can really, as you see there, only fit the two of them. According to police, they were on an 8-foot dinghy Saturday night when Lynette fell overboard, according to Brian, and vanished. So it is possible this is the exact boat that they were on. Police say that Brian told them that he and Lynette were making their way on this dinghy from Hopetown in the Bahamas to Elbow Key. Local authorities have said that the couple went out around 7:30 at night. It was dark and the conditions were not ideal. Wind gusts were reportedly between 18 and 22 knots. And if you're not a boater, we're talking between 20 and 25 miles per hour. Now, Brian claims that Lynette fell off the dinghy and she had the keys, and the keys went with her. And as you look at this picture of the boat, again, you can see there's not a lot of space on it. And you can see if there was a big gust that it definitely would be possible for someone to lose balance and fall off. And
Exactly. Why would you travel on that dinghy late at night when it's dark? As I said, no navigation system that I can see, no life jackets either. They were obviously going to go aboard because they got one of these trolley trucks here. That's what we call them over here in the UK. And they've got, looks like maybe an air canister as well. Maybe they want to go snorkeling. And then maybe this all collapses down once it's deflated, if it's an inflatable one. And then it all fits into this truck that goes on wheels. They're normally called festival trucks because you see them a lot at festivals, people carrying all their tents and bits and pieces on them. So, but this is really, really strange. I'm going to play this and then I've got to go and get my drink because I've got a bit of a sore throat today.
it appears also that Lynette, she's sitting on the side of the dinghy in this picture. So that story, when you hear it, you might think that definitely makes sense, that it's possible that that is what happened. But Lynette's daughter is now pushing back on that potential scenario, and she's doing it in a big way that we're going to get into in just a moment. Lynette was not reported missing for hours because it took Brian hours until Sunday morning to make it to this marina in Marsh Harbor, Bahamas. Now, it's not clear exactly where Brian claims Lynette fell into the water, but when you look at this map, you can see that Marsh Harbor is on the other side of the bay from where the hookers said they were going. Now, once ashore, investigators say that Brian told someone what had happened, and that person called authorities, and the search has been going on air, sea, land ever since in trying to find Lynette. Now, in their own words, this couple said they were living their best life. Their boat is called Soulmate, and they had been living this life at sea for a decade. It seems like everything was perfect, and I know that's cliche to say in a lot of true crime stories, but this is where things are allegedly getting a bit concerning because Lynette's daughter is going public and saying everything was not perfect for this couple. Lynette's daughter is named Carly Aylesworth. She lives in Michigan. Brian is her stepfather. She told NBC News it is unlikely, in her opinion, that her mom, who's an experienced sailor and a fit person, would, quote, just fall off the boat. On top of that, Aylesworth made a shocking claim in an interview with Fox News where she claims the hookers had a history of domestic violence. She went on to say, and this is in a Fox News interview, that Brian Hooker in the past allegedly threatened to choke Lynette out and throw her overboard. Quote, the fact that this is happening makes me believe there is more to the story, she said in that interview.
A bit of DV going on there, I think, don't you guys? Even though they look happy, but, you know, pictures can tell 1,000 lies, can't they?
But she wasn't done. She claims that this incident where Brian allegedly threatened Lynette, said he was going to choke her out and throw her overboard, she says that happened 2 years ago. I will tell you, in a background search, I was unable to find any arrests or charges in connection to Brian and Lynette Hooker. And again, these are just allegations being made by Lynette's daughter publicly. Aylesworth, the daughter, then says that Brian called her on Sunday after her mom vanished to share this news. And she says that Brian sounded monotone and relaxed when he called her. Now, when asked if she suspects foul play in this case, Aylesworth told Fox News, quote, a little bit at the moment. Aylesworth says that she's known Brian pretty much her entire life, that he married her mom when she was about 4 years old and, quote, replaced my dad pretty quick. She then went on to say in this Fox News interview that Brian has always been the one to make the rules of the house, and she described him as someone who has anger he hasn't processed, and she also accused him of choking out one of his daughters in the past. Again, this is an allegation that has not been confirmed by police or investigators. So you can see, though, based on those allegations, some very, very strong wording and damning claims about Brian Hooker being made by his own stepdaughter. Aylesworth is now calling for a full investigation into what happened to her mom, but Brian is now making a public statement that we'll get into in just a second. The stepdaughter is also claiming that Brian called her to tell her that authorities found a flotation device that he claims to have thrown her mom after she fell in. According to NBC News, the head of the local fire and rescue group that has been searching for Lynette since...
Well, if that was the boat they went missing on, or she went missing on, I should say, I couldn't see no flotation devices there unless it's underneath some stuff, but you would have thought, being a safety equipment, it'd be either on you or you'd have it very close to hand.
Saturday night is now calling this situation a recovery operation. The U.S. State Department told NBC it's working with Bahamian authorities to provide assistance in this case. And also today, CBS News tracked Brian Hooker down in the Bahamas. It's a video that's been posted online showing Brian standing in what appears to be a parking lot. And they asked him for his side of the story, and he did not answer their questions. But he did put a statement on Facebook, writing, quote, I am heartbroken over the recent boat accident in unpredictable seas and high winds that caused my beloved Lynette to fall from our small dinghy near Elbow Key in the Bahamas. Despite desperate attempts to reach her, the winds and currents drove us further apart. We continue to search for her, and that is my sole focus. Our family is deeply grateful for the Bahamian people's assistance, especially that of the Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue Team, Royal Bahamas Police Force, Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and the U.S. Coast Guard, who have worked tirelessly in an ongoing effort to bring Lynette back to us. Thank you to everyone for keeping Lynette in your thoughts and for your support for our family during this difficult time, end quote. I did send Brian Hooker a message to see if he has any response to the allegations that his stepdaughter has made in these recent interviews. And we also have been in touch with Carly Aylesworth, the stepdaughter, and have invited her to come on to talk more about this case. And that invitation is open. Joining us now to talk more about this case, Michael Winkleman, maritime attorney. Always great to have you on Law and Crime when we're following some of these cases out of the Caribbean. Brian Hooker's story. They're on this dinghy and they're in some less than ideal conditions. And he says Lynette falls off, the keys go with her, and then he has to paddle back to shore. How plausible, just knowing the water and the cases you work, I mean, how plausible is that story that he's giving at this point?
Not very. I mean, I want to give him the benefit of the doubts because I don't want to cast blame on people before there's been due process. But from my view, there's definitely a lot of holes in the story. I mean, really, it's one of two things, Chris. It's either a terrible accident or it's a terrible crime. So it's not like there's a million theories that can be going around there. If we set aside the chance that it's a crime and it's just an accident, these are experienced mariners They would have been aware of the sea conditions. Why would you hop on your dinghy to go for a ride to try to get to shore? Maybe it could have been because the conditions were rough. But if you're really an experienced mariner, you're not going to keep yourself in that position unless it came out of nowhere, unless it was an unknown storm system. But from what I've seen with a little bit of research was that there was a known cold front coming through. More often than not, with cold fronts, what comes through first is some heavy storms. So there's definitely holes there, Chris.
Because I think
And also, I was just thinking as well, most people would have spare keys, wouldn't you think? So even if she had keys on her, which is a bit strange either way, but you would have thought they would have hidden spare set of keys on their main boat for a case of emergencies. It just makes common sense. I've got spare keys to my house, well, bungalow, all over the place. And so if I lose one set, which I'm likely to do and often have, I know where other sets are to go and find, to go and get in or out. And this is just a crazy story. And from when I first heard it last night, before I heard the breaking news this morning, I did think, this is all suspect. I got my little notepad and pen, excuse me, and I was writing down like rubber dinghy, as I call them, no life jackets that I could see. She had the keys. Why would they sail late at night? Well, it wasn't late, it's 7 o'clock at night, but it's still dark. Why would you also sail in rough seas? And, I just wrote them all down. And when I looked at it after the law and crime or on the case had finished, I thought, and he's got past with domestic violence as well. And I thought, I bet they had an argument and he shoved her. And, and he depends. I mean, whether or not she's a strong swimmer, I would have thought if you're boat people, that's one thing you'd be able to do is swim. So, not unless they had a fight in the water and he held her under till she drowned. So we won't know till it comes out when it goes to court, if it goes to court.
the conditions, 18 to 20 knot winds, which for those who aren't boaters, we're talking like 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts. I mean, to be on and you look back at their YouTube, they put out a lot, and you can see like they know what they're doing. I mean, they've done some serious trips. Like, how surprising is it that would go out in a dinghy in those type of conditions?
Yeah, exactly. Unless they were trying to avoid a storm, that would be plausible to me, that maybe they were trying to hit land, so that's why they were trying to do that. But if that were the case, again, you would have thought they would have left way earlier.
Yeah, and going out at 7:30 at night, it's dark. There's just part of it. It doesn't seem like the type of thing, people who regularly practice safety, which it appears they do, that they would go with. At the same time, how likely is it that we'll find Lynette Hooker's body? I know that local authorities have said this is more a recovery mission at this point. It's been a couple of days. She went overboard off of this dinghy, according to Brian, at night. I mean, what kind of happens here in that part of the investigation?
So the statistics show that if you're not found within the first 24 hours, your chances of survival are infinitesimally small. I mean, and even to me, I think there's more holes in the story from Brian about her going overboard, him not being able to get to her. I know if my wife were in the water, I mean, there should have been life jackets on the vessel. I mean, I would be doing everything I could, and I would most likely put myself in the water to go and rescue my wife. So just more holes from my perspective.
Like, at this point, if you're the Bahamian authorities and you're trying to figure out what happened, you don't have a body to this point. All of this happened in the middle of the night. He doesn't have the keys to the vessel. He says that he paddles back to shore to Marsh Harbor. I mean, how do you go about this investigation to try and, find out whether his story is actually the truth?
Yeah, so I mean, that's basically crime investigation 101. Of course, I'm always on the civil side. When people get hurt, I represent them in civil cases. But at the end of the day, the investigation isn't that difficult in what I would do versus what criminal authorities would do. But you're going to have a limited data set. I mean, the main thing is going to be Brian's story, and are they buying it? if they had an opportunity to check his blood alcohol levels to see whether or not he was intoxicated. But what was the reason they were going there? Were they going there to avoid bad weather, or were they going there to go to a bar? I mean, I'm a native Miamian. I spent plenty of time in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Bars at sea, on land in the Bahamas, the daughters commented that they were drinkers and that there was some volatility in the relationship. You would, of course, want to do an interview with the daughter as well. I know the FBI is involved. So I think between the Royal Bahamian authorities and the FBI, they're going to have some data to sift through. And the question is it going to be enough to actually charge Brian with a crime? Or when all the data is sifted through, do people determine that it was an accident?
And the stepdaughter, I mean, she has gone scorched earth in these interviews in terms of the allegations she's making. I mean, being very public and saying that allegedly this relationship was not as perfect as it looked on social media, that there was a history of domestic violence, in her words. She made allegations about them drinking and just volatility in the relationship. How much does that factor in? And if you know the Bahamian authorities, how they go about it, because she said, at least in the Fox News interview that she did, that she called the Bahamian authorities and she couldn't really get through. And apparently she has a lawyer. How much can that actually factor into trying to figure out in that moment how Lynette Hooker goes overboard?
I think it plays considerable weight. I think her name was Carly, and Carly's clearly coming out and telling a very strong narrative about a very rocky relationship, about people that were big drinkers, that they had a volatile relationship. And those are definitely factors that any investigating authority would look into and give significant weight, just to really put together the pieces of the puzzle.
And it seems like, the other part of it too is she said that Brian sounded monotone and calm when he called her with the news. And like, on one hand, I don't know how I would respond, making that phone call if it was me. At the same time, this is someone who paddled a heck of a long way, apparently, back to shore because he didn't have keys to the engine after she went overboard. And he releases this statement on Facebook. And Facebook's a real casual way to release a statement as opposed to going through like a law firm. But it read to me like a lawyer wrote this. I don't know what his background is, but he thanked every single, department that's a part of this, saying, my family appreciates it. It just came off to me as professionally written, not saying that that's a bad thing, but what stood out to you in the statement that he made?
I completely agree, Chris. Having read the statement, it was very short. It was very terse. It didn't really have a lot of emotion behind it. If you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's in a state of shock and maybe someone wrote it on his behalf, but it did feel very generic, sort of what ChatGPT would tell you to write in that kind of a situation. And the fact that he was cold and monotone when telling the story, again, benefit of the doubt says, yeah, he's in a state of shock. But in my experience, and I deal with grieving families all the time, people who've been through terrible, terrible traumas. That's not the response that I generally see. The response that I generally see is tremendous grief, tremendous overwhelm, tremendous sadness, tremendous tears. And that not being there, does that raise red flags? Certainly. But again, to be clear, I do think I should be entitled to due process. I think we should get to the bottom of it. Of course, you and I are just giving our opinions. But yes, I do think there's a lot of red flags that show something problematic here.
What do you just think of? I just think of what it must have been like if his story is true. You think of this woman you called the love of your life going overboard, and you're trying to get to her and you can't because the current is pushing you away, and then you have to paddle ashore. It sounds terrifying and incredibly sad if that's what happened. Certainly it's sad either way. If you were his attorney, what type of advice does an attorney give him at this point? He's in a foreign country. It's not just a case where your wife went overboard anymore, because you have a stepdaughter who is making some very serious allegations that's turned the heat up on you as this investigation's ongoing. Like, what's typically the advice that you would give someone in his situation?
Well, that's a tricky question for me, Chris, because I'm on the civil side. So I'm usually prosecuting the case, pushing forward the case. So with criminal defense attorneys, their analysis is very different. They don't want them to get charged. Brian may have admitted to him that he did it, but then he can't necessarily divulge that. Having said that, let's assume it really was an accident and I was he was my client. I would want to put him on television to tell the story about what happened, because in today's world, narrative shifts so quickly. So if you're trying to
and also there's been sort of like I go and check, actually. I might find it before the end of this video to see what like the national news people were saying. So I'll carry on playing this and I'll just go and see that. I've got to research that at the beginning.
Necessarily control the narrative, but if you're trying to get the truth out, get the truth out. Sit down with you, talk to Chris and say, hey, look, this is what happened. This is why it happened. Yeah, I was in a state of shock at first, and this is the love of my life. I wish I had gone in after, but put it out there. So to me, when you doing that versus putting out these cold and sort of terse statements, again, more red flags.
It certainly is. And we did reach out to him, and
I figured you did.
He's welcome to come on, and we would love to hear his side of the story, even though we know it's an incredibly tough time with what he's alleging took place. Is he likely at this point, like with how the Bahamian authorities in some of these cases, and I know you're on the civil side, like, is he free to go? I mean, he hasn't been charged, but in terms of, the Bahamians, as the search is ongoing, if he wanted to head back to the United States, would he be free to do that?
So what I've seen in real time is that there have been no charges that have been filed. I know the Bahamian authorities would often say something like, look, we don't want you to leave the island. Practically speaking, legally speaking, could he leave the island? Yes. If they wanted to, could they prevent him from getting on a plane or a boat? Sure. But given the fact that he has not been charged, I do think he's free to leave the country.
And you wonder, I mean, if, if he does have a lawyer, someone advising him, like if he was to leave at this point, what type of message would that send, even if he is, completely innocent and this was a terrible, terrible accident? How are the Bahamians when it comes to these types of searches and some of these cases that play out? It's obviously a huge tourist destination, a lot of boaters, not just people like the hookers, but I used to live in South Florida. It'd be very easy to just run a boat over, to like the west end of the Bahamas. How are the Bahamians when it comes to cases like this?
I think they're great. I mean, in my experience, and I've dealt with them dozens and dozens of times, they're very passionate people. They want to get to the bottom of situations. They're often working in concert with the FBI, and they're very good at their job, particularly with the Royal Bahamas Maritime Agency. I mean, they are terrific at investigating accidents. Sometimes people think maybe they're in bed with the cruise lines. Obviously, this is not a cruise ship case, but because the cruise industry puts so much time and effort and money into the region, but I can't say that to be the truth. So in my view, I think they're terrific. I think they're going to get to the bottom of it. There's a limited data set that's available to them, but let's see what they're able to come up with.
And when it comes to the U.S. State Department, the FBI, I know they put out, the State Department put out a statement saying that they're cooperating with authorities. Clearly, this is a Bahamian case. And to your point, they're really good at this and they have a lot of experience in a lot of these cases. But like, what does that assistance actually look like when the State Department or the FBI says that they're helping out?
Well, so, I mean, yes, it happened in the Bahamas, so it's a Bahamas case, but it happened to a U.S. citizen. Therefore, FBI has jurisdiction and can have as much or as little involvement as they want. Obviously, the FBI has a heck of a lot on their plate. So with Lynette going missing, that's not necessarily the top thing on the radar. So I think if in the FBI's view, if there's adequate resources that are put to it, then they're going to really rely on that. Often in situations of missing persons, Coast Guard gets involved immediately. They'll set up a grid area. They'll conduct an entire search and investigation, or as here they call a recovery mission. I don't know the extent of the Coast Guard's efforts, but they are unbelievably good at locating bodies. So I hope to a certain extent they've been involved in the rescue operations.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and you think of that at this point too, in a lot of these cases, it just bodies are not found, and, we did have that case out of Barcelona recently with a U.S. college student who ended up passing away, and his body did come up ashore, I think back to Sudisha Kananki, who is the American college student in the Dominican Republic, and her body did not come back to shore after, something that happened during spring break. In these cases, what makes it so difficult when you look at the waterway and the area around where Brian is alleging all of this took place? Just why is it so challenging for a recovery to actually happen?
Well, it's finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, you've got winds, you've got ocean currents, you've got whether or not the body took on water and sunk immediately. So you've got a million variables, but the biggest part of it is there's just such a huge geographic area, and every minute that goes by expands that area. So as great as the Coast Guard is, they are fighting an unbelievably uphill battle to try to find that needle in a haystack.
This might put you on the spot as well, but for Carly, the stepdaughter, and I know she said that she had an attorney in that Fox News interview, like what role would an attorney be playing for her at this point? Clearly, this is her biological mom, also her stepdad, who's been in her life for a long time. And I know it doesn't seem like they have the best of relationship, but what is the role of an attorney for someone like her in a situation like this as this search is going on?
Well, I think if she did hire counsel, the counsel would be able to try to get involved in the investigation as much as possible. Really not doing that much that would be different than what Carly can do, but picking up the phone, calling the authorities. Theoretically, if she wanted to file a case, a civil case, she could then have subpoena power to be able to get more information. She could do a deposition of him to try to get more questions. So there's a lot that an attorney could do. It's probably a little bit early for that. But yeah, a civil attorney could do a lot to further the investigation. Not necessarily in the short term, but more in the long term. As an example, if it's 6 months from now and there's still more questions unanswered, she could certainly file suit. She could certainly have an attorney sit down and take his own deposition, which is basically a question and answer session, to try to get more information, as well as getting any kind of records, seeing was there any kind of life insurance policy that he had taken out on the wife? Was there any type of life insurance payment that was made? So definitely a civil attorney could dig a little bit deeper into the investigation.
Yeah, and that's a good point on the financials. We don't really know. I mean, they're retired at this point. They certainly do a lot of traveling and own this sailboat. How long does a search like this go for? I know we're at the recovery point. Saturday night is when this allegedly took place, and now we're talking on Wednesday.
I would be surprised if it was still underway. In my experience, you've got a good 24 to 48 hour window. I've definitely seen it go up to more like 72 hours. But now when we're this far out, I'm sure it's winding down.
Yeah, and a lot of questions still at this point. Michael Winkleman,
Definitely.
maritime attorney. Always great to have your expertise here on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you.
That will do it for On the Case.
So yeah, what do you think on that one then? You know, do you think the husband has something to do with it? Is he innocent or is he guilty? There's definitely probable cause. I can't speak today, because there's domestic violence reportedly in the past. How true that is, we don't know. But I have found a news clip from her daughter. So I'll just quickly share that. I haven't listened to this, so it's not very long. So just bear with me. Put sound on full screen. Let me just check it's all working. Yeah. So just let me get rid of that one in a minute. There we go. Oh, no, we don't want an advert. A minute. Oh, God.
At Vodafone, save up to...
Sorry about this. I didn't realise there was an advert. There we go.
It just doesn't add up. My mom is very fit and strong. She's a good swimmer. Like, why was she swimming away from the boat? Why did she have the key? The story just does not make sense to me. There's also been history of domestic violence in that relationship. So I do believe something might have happened to her.
So is there a history of Brian being violent towards your mother? And can you elaborate on that?
Yes, there's history of him choking her out and threatening to throw her overboard. So the fact that this is actually happening makes me believe there's more to the story.
Wow.
Why are you
a minute. There we have it. Let me come back here so I can stop sharing. So yeah, so her daughter says there's past history of domestic violence. She said there's also choking instance that's happened. So she's obviously witnessed that, or maybe her mum's just told her, what's been going on in the past. But strangling is the worst part of domestic violence, in my opinion. To me, if you can sort of like start strangling your partner or anybody, doesn't have to be your partner, but when you start to strangle someone, to me, the next step is only death. If you're capable of being so cruel and strangle someone to squeeze the life out of them, then you're capable of murder. That's how I feel of it, chilling as it sounds. And I hope the daughter is right. I'm glad she went on the news to say it. Obviously, the police now have taken this into consideration because, he's now been arrested. I should play the part 2 that was breaking, but I've Shush. I've not heard this one this morning. I will try and skip any adverts that comes onto it. Right, let me share that screen. So this was only my time, about 3.5 hours ago. Full screen. Oh, a minute. Bear with. I forgot to add the screen to it. So is that the breaking news one? Yeah. Lose my headphones. There we go. Exactly. Probable cause. I think a lot of it is from her daughter. You know, she's given her mum a voice. And, you know, we need to support those voiceless people because her mum can't say what's happened to her now. So I'm glad the daughter's spoken out and maybe the police are listening to her. If it's like here in the UK, if you're arrested or questioned, you know, in a police station, they can hold you for 36 hours. After 36 hours, if they got no leads, you know, to nothing to arrest you on, to keep you detained, you know, and you're innocent, they have to let you go. But they can always apply to the court to extend the 36 hours to 72 hours. But then you really need to make sure you get all your evidence up and that. But I hope for the family's sake that Lynette's body is found and that, you know, because they need to be able to lay her to rest and not just let the ocean take her. Oh,
They told the AP that they have opened
there
a
we go.
criminal
Sorry about that.
investigation. Now, again, we don't specifically know what led to the latest developments in this case, but clearly there is something going on. Authorities have been looking for Lynette Hooker ever since Saturday night. Brian Hooker claimed that the two of them were riding on an 8-foot dinghy, one of those.
I do apologize if you spent about 5 minutes looking at my face. I wasn't in on the StreamYard studio while I was listening to this a few minutes back. I had it on the main screen from breaking news, but I didn't want any sudden adverts to come up, so I was ready to hit pause. So I do apologize if you had to see my face for about 5 minutes, but I'll just carry on playing now.
Inflatable boats might have an engine on the back and a hard bottom. And they were on this dinghy and tight fit for two people when Lynette fell overboard. And she had the keys to the engine. And those keys, according to Brian, went with her into the water, and no one has seen her. Reportedly claimed that he had to paddle to land, and it took him hours to get there, and he didn't get to a marina until Sunday morning when he told someone what had happened, and then they called the police, and the search began, according to media reports. Local authorities have said that it was a windy night, and frankly, less than ideal conditions to be out on such a small inflatable vessel, because winds were between 18 and 20 knots, which is roughly 20 to 25 miles per hour. Now, authorities have not found Lynette Hooker's body. It has been multiple days at this point since she, according to her husband, fell into the water. One rescue official told NBC News that they do believe at this point, and that part of the story, is we're talking about a recovery mission. Now, the AP is also reporting that U.S. authorities have interviewed Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth, and she has become a key part of this story. She has told media outlets that the hookers, who often shared their travels at sea on social media, allegedly had a history of domestic violence. And specifically, she has claimed that Brian allegedly had anger issues and had made allegedly serious threats against her mom, Lynette Hooker, in the past, including in one case, she said in an interview on Fox News 2 years ago, he allegedly claimed, she says, to have threatened Lynette Hooker, saying that he was going to choke her out and throw her overboard. This couple had been reportedly traveling at sea and living this life for roughly a decade. Now, we'll have more on the specific claims that Lynette's daughter has been making in just a moment. And I do want to point out that they are just allegations at this point. Here's more of our coverage about the search for answers into what happened to Lynette Hooker. This was recorded before this big breaking news story. This is a video that the hookers posted to their YouTube channel just 4 weeks ago from the Bahamas. You can see they're paddleboarding down a waterway. The social media channels for this couple, and they're very active on social media producing content, is called the Sailing Hookers. And the couple would post videos of them going to some amazing places in the Caribbean. Their TikTok account says, "We sailed away from BS, a married couple living their best life." And it really appeared, looking at these videos, that that is what they were doing. This is their last TikTok post from 5 days ago of them enjoying the Bahamas. Now, this couple bought a boat in Texas 3 years ago, according to social media. Big sailboat, nice enough cabin where you can spend the night and do these long trips. And it seems like the hookers are incredibly experienced on the water. This is part of the video where they announced that they had bought this boat, showing Brian climbing up the mast with a safety harness and Lynette spotting him. If you're going to sail a boat like this, and you're going to do what they did, sailing these long haul trips, and they reportedly did this for 10 years, you really have to be experienced, you have to be a team, and you have to look out for each other. And it appears that's who the hookers were.
And you also need to be wearing your life jackets as well, because, you know, that would be the number one rule. As soon as you step on a boat, is to put your life jacket on, because no matter how experienced you are, you never know when that life jacket will come in handy. And it just goes to show, you know, if they had life jackets and they went on that little dinghy, as I call it, because it's only a tiny thing, if they had life jackets on, Lynette would be alive today. Simple as.
Now, knowing just how much this couple seemed to care about safety, it does make what allegedly happened on Saturday night a little bit surprising. This is a picture that was part of the last TikTok video that the hookers posted from the Bahamas, and it's the two of them riding on what appears to be a dinghy, a small boat. It's inflatable, has a hard bottom, an engine on the back, and it can really, as you see there, only fit the two of them. According to police, they were on an 8-foot dinghy Saturday night when Lynette fell overboard, according to Brian, and vanished. So it is possible this is the exact boat that they were on. Police say that Brian told them that he and Lynette were making their way on this dinghy from Hopetown in the Bahamas to Elbow Key. Local authorities have said that the couple went out around 7:30 at night. It was dark and the conditions were not ideal. Wind gusts were reportedly between 18 and 20 knots. If you're not a boater, we're talking between 20 and 25 miles per hour. Now, Brian claims that Lynette fell off the dinghy and she had the keys, and the keys went with her. And as you look at this picture of the boat, again, you can see There's not a lot of space on it. And you can see if there was a big gust that it definitely would be possible for someone to lose balance and fall off. And it appears also that Lynette, she's sitting on the side of the dinghy in this picture. So that story, when you hear it, you might think that definitely makes sense, that it's possible that that is what happened. But Lynette's daughter is now pushing back on that potential scenario. And she's doing it in a big way that we're going to get into in just a moment. Lynette was not reported missing for hours because it took Brian hours until Sunday morning to make it to this marina in Marsh Harbor, Bahamas. Now, it's not clear exactly where Brian claims Lynette fell into the water, but when you look at this map, you can see that Marsh Harbor is on the other side of the bay from where the hookers said they were going. Now, once ashore, investigators say that Brian told someone what had happened, and that person called authorities, and the search has been going on air, sea, land ever since in trying to find Lynette. Now, in their own words, this couple said they were living their best life. Their boat is called Soulmate, and they had been living this life at sea for a decade. It seems like everything was perfect, and I know that's cliche to say in a lot of true crime stories, but this is where things are allegedly getting a bit concerning because Lynette's daughter is going public and saying everything was not perfect for this couple. Lynette's daughter is named Carly Aylesworth. She lives in Michigan. Brian is her stepfather. She told NBC News it is unlikely, in her opinion, that her mom, who's an experienced sailor and a fit person, would, quote, just fall off the boat. On top of that, Aylesworth made a shocking claim in an interview with Fox News where she claims the hookers had a history of domestic violence. She went on to say, and this is in a Fox News interview, that Brian Hooker in the past allegedly threatened to choke Lynette out and throw over, quote,
Let's see if we can skip some of
this
this.
is happening makes me believe there is more to the story, she said in that interview. And she wasn't done. She claims that this incident where Brian allegedly threatened Lynette, said he was going to choke her out and throw her overboard, she says that happened 2 years ago. I will tell you, in a background search, I was unable to find any arrests or charges in connection to Brian and Lynette Hooker. And again, these are just allegations being made by Lynette's daughter publicly. Aylesworth,
Yeah, so I'm going to stop it here, guys, because even though that's the breaking news and we've just heard that he has now been arrested, so he's answering questions, hopefully, and not going no comment to the law enforcement. I will now end this because as I scroll through the bottom of the second part, he's just going over the whole story again, which is what I did in the first one. So you don't need to listen to it twice over within an hour. So, but I will do a part 2 when I hear what the evidence is on it. You know, if he's been charged or whatever, and then we'll follow it up from there. So if you're watching this by replay because no one's come into my chat. I know I went live really, really early, mainly because I'm busy this afternoon and I don't think I'm going to get to do a live this afternoon. Even though I've got several stories in my mind and on my notepad that I want to cover. So if you're watching this on replay, please like and share and subscribe if you can. It is all free. It just helps me to get the YouTube. And also this news gets out there because we need to give Lynette a voice. Hopefully they can find a body. I really pray they can find a body so that her daughter can bury her, cremate her, you know, and say a proper goodbye to her. You know, it's so cruel when something not very nice, you know, when a family member or a dear friend goes missing and, you know, there's no body, you can't have a proper burial service. So, yeah. So I'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks.